For real, niggas who ain't got no feelings. Check it out now.
Welcome to the first episode of Eats, Rhymes, and Life with your chef, your man, the infamous Chef P. Before I get any of this started, let me just say I want to give a big shout out and thanks for the inspiration to my wife Keisha and my daughter Carson. All of this is for you. Second, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a retired Air Force Master Sergeant. Loved what I did for 20 years. Around 2001, I got the love to cook and I had to follow it. So I stuck my time out in the Air Force, and when I retired, I chased my dream. I chased my dream to cook. Retired, went to culinary school, finally got done with that in 2016. I've been cooking on the Vegas Strip for about 3 years and I haven't looked back. The one thing I can say about that is you might have done something your whole life, but at some point you gotta chase what you love and you might as well go ahead and do it. So with that, let's talk about what I wanna do with this channel. A couple things. Both have to do with love. One, I've already mentioned, the love of cooking. The second, the love of hip hop. Both have meant a tremendous amount in my life. So I'd like to share a little bit with y'all. So what we're gonna do tonight is a celebratory kind of attitude. So when you celebrate, you go big, and when you go big, you go filet mignon. So that's what we're gonna do tonight. I can't stress enough how easy this is. You know, I get a lot of feedback on my Facebook, you know, asking for recipes, asking for advice, and you know, a lot of things get lost in translation when it comes to social media. I'm sure you can tell with today's climate. So, you know, what better way than for me to get back and put it on video so I can tell you, you can see it, and there's nothing gets lost in translation that way. So you see what I'm doing, and we can go from there. When you go to my YouTube channel, make sure you leave suggestions. You know, this is the first video. Maybe the lighting could be better. Maybe the sound isn't the greatest. I've got my daughter on camera over here in the background in case you guys hear it. She's up in her crib trying to go to sleep. I know my parents can feel about, you know, all the parents out there can understand where I'm coming from on that. So if you hear that, don't worry about it. She's good to go. But if I run out of here, that means she got some stuff going on. So, you know, what I want to do is just give back and let you guys see what I do when I post pictures on Facebook and things like that, and show the cooks at home, you know, how easy this kind of stuff is. It's not hard. You know, I don't want to do anything overly fancy or anything like that. I just want to, you know, give you guys some recipes that you can cook at your home for your family, your children. But I also want the feedback from you guys to tell me what you want to see from me. Is there something you have questions about, or what is this, or anything like that? So what we're going to do tonight, like I said, is filet mignon. You know, I've always been a big fan of the grill my whole life. But recently I started cooking steak inside more, predominantly because we had our daughter. So, you know, we got to keep an eye on her and stuff like that. And I've kind of grown to like it on the stove more than I have the grill. You know, nothing replaces that grill flavor, but what I'm going to show you tonight, it really comes close, and I think you guys are going to like it. So with that being said, we're going to talk about some of the things that I've got on my board. And what I've got on my board right here is all my items ready to go. And this is going to help you in the kitchen when you start. This is called mise en place. And what mise en place sounds like a fancy term. It's really not. It's French for everything in its place. That means I have everything in its place ready to go. And that's one thing that hampers cooks at home is, you know, before I went to school and kind of learned what's going on, I'm trying to cook at home. And when I'm cooking at home, I don't have everything ready. I'm ducking in the refrigerator. I'm ducking in the pantry. I'm going under cabinets. Well, you know, if you prepare and think about what you're going to need, you know, you're going to be fine. As long as everything is in its place, you're going to be good to go. I promise you. And with that being said, let's take a look at what I've got on the board here. Okay, so here's our board. So let's talk about what we got on the board right here. First off, we're going to talk about our cooking vessel, and that's our skillet, that's our pan. So this is a stainless steel pan with a nice heavy bottom. This is what I prefer because this gives me the opportunity to do is cook the steak and directly transfer this entire pan straight into the oven. I don't have to worry about transfer. Now, with that being said, if you don't have this type of pan, you're fine. What you need to do is, if you have a baking tray or a glass tray, anything that can go in the oven that you can bake with, you can use that. You're gonna preheat your oven to 350. What you need to do with whatever you're using, if it's not this, is leave that in the oven while it preheats so that cooking vessel gets hot as well. You don't want to take something from a hot pan and put it in something cold, because the first thing that's going to do is lower the temperature of whatever you're trying to cook. So make sure whatever you're using is hot and you're going to be good to go. You don't have to have this type of pan, but I promise you it's going to make life totally easier. This is one thing to clean instead of two things to clean. So we'll put that over here on the stove. Let's talk about what else we have. We got sea salt. I'm sure everybody is familiar with that. We've got a black peppercorn grinder. Now the reason I say this is I don't want you guys to use the red and white pepper container that you've probably had in your pantry for maybe 3 years past its expiration date. A lot of people have tons of those and they leave them in there, they forget about it, and that pepper goes stale, for lack of a better term. This right here, I mean, it's on your grocery stores everywhere. It gives you the ability to crack it, right here, and you don't have to use a peppercorn grinder or a coffee grinder or anything like that. So I highly recommend, I stay in stock of these. Third, I'm sorry, we're going to talk about the oil that we're going to use. Now, we're not going to use a lot of oil. We're going to do a medium heat saute, or in this case, we're going to sear the meat. This is grapeseed oil. This is good for medium high heat. You can use almost any oil. I would stay away for this type of cooking, anything with a low smoke point. I'd stay away from, regular olive oil and things like that. This is a good medium high heat oil. Again, this is in all grocery stores, so this isn't hard to find. So another thing we're going to use when we sear this steak is fresh herb. Now, you can use any fresh herb you want, whatever your flavor or whatever your palate likes. This is tarragon. Tarragon has a distinct licorice type flavor. Now, and that might throw you off and you say, oh, I don't like licorice. Well, you know what? I don't like licorice either. But if I could compare this to something, I would say that, the distinct flavor that Italian sausage has? Well, that's fennel, and fennel has a licorice flavor. So this is slightly, I would say this is milder than fennel. It just kind of gives you that really distinct herbal flavor that goes along well with this. This really goes well with seafood. But you can do any herb you want, any herb you have, whether it be thyme, rosemary, whatever. I just happen to have some tarragon in the fridge, so that's what we're going with tonight. So I have 1 piece of crushed garlic. This is gonna go in there as well. Just smash it with your hand. And the reason we're gonna smash it is, just to open it up a little, to get some of the oils and coming out of it while we're cooking it. We don't want to chop this down. The reason we don't want to chop it down is because if we get it too small, it could burn while it's in there. So obviously we don't want that. We don't want it to get bitter or anything like that. So it's just 1 clove. It's not going to give it a heavy garlic taste. This and the herb is just to give it that subtle, we're just enhancing the flavor. There's a word for enhancing flavor, and that's pince. And that's basically what we're doing. You hear pince a lot when you cook tomatoes and stuff like that, but this is the same thing. We're enhancing the flavor with whatever we can get it. So that's what we're going to do with those two. And then we're gonna use about a tablespoon of butter. And you'll understand this more once we get to cooking the steak. So, stay tuned for that one. While I'm talking about this, you want whole fat butter. We don't want clarified butter or anything like that. Whole fat butter, just the regular butter you get at the store. Make sure this is unsalted butter. The reason is because if you get salted butter, well, then you're not controlling the seasoning. We have unsalted butter, that means you control the salt, you control how it tastes. If we get salted butter, that means it's already, you're way past where you want to be already and you don't have any control. And so lastly, we'll talk about the star of the show. This is filet mignon. This one, I got it at my local grocery store. Nothing, crazy or special. This is a choice cut. Filet mignon in French means tender filet. That's, a gee whiz kind of thing. It comes from, this meat runs along the spine. This is the tenderest cut on the cow. Now, a lot of people say this is the best cut. Well, I have top 3 cuts of beef, and this one is not number 1, but it is in the top 3. My number 1 is ribeye, bone-in ribeye. Anything with bone is going to taste better. This would be number 3, right behind skirt steak. I love skirt steak. This, maybe some people's number 1. It is definitely a fantastic cut of meat. It's a good meat for, special occasions. You want to do something for your spouse or your partner, a great dinner. This is definitely one of the ways to go. One thing about this, speaking about how much, talking about cost, this steak right here, if I was to get this on the strip, granted the Vegas strip is more expensive probably than, anywhere else besides, Chicago, New York, LA, San Francisco. This cut would probably be a petite filet, and it would probably run me like $35 probably. And I got this in the store for $7. So you can see, I always tell people jokingly, cooking is like the dope game. You make something really cheap and you sell it for high. And that's how you make money. But this is really easy to do at home. This is something you get at a fantastic restaurant that you can do at home for a quarter of the price. So before we even go to the stove, I want to talk about seasoning this. This cut of meat only needs salt and pepper. That's it. It doesn't need to be marinated. I would actually stay against marinating because this cut of meat, is more for the flavor of the beef. It's very tender, and that's what we're looking for. Typically, I would season this. This is just a little trick I do. I would season this. I would take this plate and I would actually lay it in an empty sink. And the reason I say that, and I'll show you in a minute, is because when I season it, some of the salt and pepper tends to go everywhere. So I wouldn't do it on here. I'm actually going to do it tonight just so you guys can see it on this cutting board. I definitely wouldn't do this typically, because if I put it on this cutting board and if I cut something else on this cutting board, I'm going to contaminate whatever was on this board. But for tonight's purposes, for demo purposes, I'm going to show you how I would season it, otherwise. So, you always see people on TV, sprinkling salt and things up high and, like, oh, they're trying to be fancy. That's actually not the case. The reason folks take salt or whatever seasoning and salt up high, especially on something like this, a protein that has a flat surface that you're trying to, season the entire surface area, is because if you season up high, you have more control of the seasoning. If I have a salt shaker or, I try to go low, I can only season a little bit at a time, and that's not what I want to do. I want to be able to control my seasoning from up high and catch more of the surface area, because that's the most important part. All of the surface area is covered with seasoning, not just tiny portions. So with that being said, we're going to hit it with salt. This needs a good amount of salt and pepper. You want that salt, that salty taste right when it goes in your mouth, along with the pepper. So you're going to take your salt. You want to hit all the sides. And like I said, this is coming from the top, seasoning up high. I get to control where all the surface area is getting hit. You want a good amount. Don't worry about it being too salty. If you think it's probably too salty, you're probably not there yet. Then we're gonna hit it with pepper. Now you see all this salt and pepper that's around here. We're gonna catch all that. And you can do the same thing, like I said, when it's in the plate in the sink. When I put this in the plate in the sink, I can do the same thing, get all the seasoning, but the good thing about it is I don't have all this mess to clean up. I can just wash it right down the sink. So that's the difference with that. So we're gonna catch all of this. All of it's gonna stick, I promise you. Make sure to keep your hands washed in between things. Anything you handle after this, make sure you wash your hands. See, I'll use my other hand for this other side. I'll still hit it with some more salt. One thing I didn't mention that I should have mentioned, I let this steak come out of the fridge probably about 20 minutes before we're gonna go to cook. Reason is you want this to come up to slightly at room temperature, maybe a little below. I go a little below. You'll hear some people say, you know, a little more. But the reason you want that is you want this to get good and, you know, somewhat to room temperature, because when you cook it, you don't want the inside of this to be totally cold. By the way, that red stripe is optional. I needed it tonight. First video. So, you know, I'll bring it out about 20 minutes before you cook it, you know. I would not go straight from the refrigerator to the pan. Like I said, you're gonna have a cold inside. So what we're gonna do on here, this is just another gee whiz thing, you know, something you can dazzle friends with at home, or your spouse, your partner. What we're gonna do is, it's called a Maillard reaction, and that's browning of the surface. And what that means is the amino acids and the natural sugars inside the meat, they're gonna start to caramelize. Just like if you had regular sugar and you put it in a pan and you put heat on it, it's gonna brown. So it's the same concept. It's called the Maillard reaction. It's named after the person who, the scientist who actually, Louis Camille Maillard, I think. It's just the caramelization of the outside of the steak. And that is actually done with many items, not just meat. Bread, when you see bread on the outside is brown, it's the same thing. It's the natural caramelization of amino acids and the sugar. And what that is flavor, obviously. If we're cooking sugar and, you know, it gets brown, I mean, obviously we all love brown sugar, and, you know, it just adds more flavor. So that's where we're at with that. It's seasoned, ready to go. We got our butter, we got our tarragon and our garlic, we've got our oil, we're done with the salt, we're done with the pepper, not done with the red stripe, and let's go from there. All right, guys, so here we go. We've got our pan cooking for roughly, I don't know, 2.5 minutes over medium-high heat. You can feel the heat coming off the pan. Like I said, the key to this whole thing is making sure this pan is good and hot. I would have the vent on. I'm not gonna turn it on simply so you can hear me talk while we're cooking it. But I typically would have the vent on. And you know, another, I don't know, I guess one thing you gotta watch for is this is gonna splatter some. So, you know, obviously it's gonna get a little dirty, but, you know, don't be like me and come in here and, you know, try to relax and cook without your shirt on and burn yourself with grease. I've done that a couple times. So anyway, here we go. We're gonna put some oil in the pan. Again, we don't need a lot of oil here. We're not trying to, you know, pan fry this at all. We just need a little bit of oil. About like that. And you can see that oil, you can see it dancing. You can see it shimmering right when it hits. You can see the smoke coming off too. That's a good sign. So here we go. We're gonna take our steak. That's what you wanna hear right there. That is exactly what you wanna hear right there. You can already tell and hear that it's searing. You wanna hear your food sear and cook right when it hits the pan, regardless of what you're cooking. Again, you can see the smoke come off of it, you know. That's why I say I would have the vent on, but for today we're not. So one more thing I need you to get, and this is gonna be for the butter. Get yourself a serving spoon. You probably haven't used this since you bought your silverware, but we're gonna need this for this particular preparation, and I'll show you why here in a second. So, you know, I get a lot of questions about how long do I cook this? There's no such thing as how long. Every steak is different, every protein is different, every pot of rice is different, every noodle, you know, everything's different. So, you know, my chefs used to tell me when I was in school, you know, it's done when it's done, and that's truly the case. It's done when it's done. That's why it's hard to say things over Facebook about how long something needs to cook, because this filet mignon is different from the next filet mignon. So this one might take less, this one might take more. So remember that. You know, I could tell you it's probably 2 to 3 minutes per side. It could be less, it could be more. And you can see right down here, you can see it starting to happen right there. And that's just like that piece right there, you can see it getting brown. That's all the fats, you know, starting to caramelize a little. We're gonna say don't touch this until it's ready to be touched. If you try to pull this and it sticks, obviously it's not ready to go. If you try to pull this and it releases, then it's probably ready to go. This steak knows when it's ready to turn. When it releases, it's ready to go. And we can take a peek here and there. You know, let's see what we got. Give it maybe 30 more seconds. This is how fast this goes. This is not, you know, something that's gonna take a long time at all. And we're about to get to the good part here in a second. You're gonna see the beautiful color when I turn this. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the video. We'll probably do another video here, maybe in a little less than a week, but you know, definitely give me your feedback. All right, let's turn this. There we go, right there. Here's where we have fun. You're gonna take that tablespoon of butter, boom, you're gonna put it right there. That herb that you got, put it right there. You're gonna take your hand and you're gonna pull this. See all that butter right there? We're just gonna baste it in butter. Baste it in butter. And what this is doing is just enhancing the flavor. It's making it better. You ever heard of gilding the lily? Well, this is what it is right here. And we're just gonna baste it. Like I said, we're gonna finish this on the stove. This is nowhere near done. The temperature we're looking for this is a nice medium rare. Medium rare being at 145. So we're actually gonna pull this at around 137, 140. Because when we pull it and we let it rest, it's gonna keep cooking and it's gonna go to the temp we want. If you wanna cook this steak medium well, go ahead and unsubscribe from my channel. You don't need to be here. I'm just joking, obviously. But we're just gonna continue to baste this. Look at that. Look how brown that's getting. This tarragon's gonna get off some flavor. We're gonna add our garlic. Get that in the mix. Again, we don't want that garlic to burn because that's gonna make it bitter. Keep basting, keep basting, keep basting. You can see it. The butter continuing to caramelize that steak. All right, at this point, we're gonna cover that herb right there. Make sure it's on the whole steak. Again, that could be thyme, rosemary, whatever you want. We can even leave that garlic right there, that's fine. We're gonna take this, we're gonna finish it in the oven. 350. Make sure your oven's preheated. All right, guys, it's roughly been 5 minutes. We've just pulled it out. I temped it. It was around 135, 137-ish. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get this out of the skillet because obviously it's hot, so we wanna get it out. We're gonna take it out, and we're gonna let it rest. I can't tell y'all how good that looks. Leave the herbs on there and everything for now. And we'll go ahead and transfer it to the cutting board, leave it on the plate, just let it cool off for maybe another 5 minutes or so. We'll see you over there. All right, guys, we got our steak resting. We're gonna let it rest just a little bit. We'll cut into it in a second. So I wanna talk about the second part of this series in my channel that I'm doing, and that would be the hip hop side of it. You know, I really feel like culinary and food and hip hop take me back to places in my life, you know, that instantly bring back great memories. And that's what food is about. That's what hip hop is about. It's about a time, it's about a moment, it's about something that triggers a memory that you know you have for a lifetime. You can take a bite of food and it's take you back 17, 18 years. You can listen to a song or hear a piece of a song and it'll take you back another 17, 18 years. So with this being the first episode, talk about a little bit how, you know, my love for hip hop grew. You know, I can remember I grew up in Hampton, Virginia, growing up in Aberdeen, and you know, going to Caesar Tarrant Elementary School on the city bus, you know, reciting word for word Roxanne, Roxanne before we got out of the bus. And you know, this is the era of breakdancing, had on parachute pants, and everybody threw out the cardboard and tried to make ourselves look like the people did on breaking, and we obviously weren't there, but you know, we had a blast doing it. It was a culture. It was something that I was instantly drawn to, and I can track it, you know, through my early years, you know, that being elementary school. And I can think of going to, I went to Lindsay Middle School, and when the city bus would drop us off, when you actually walked into the school, there was only a certain amount of the school that was even open yet. And they had, you know, a cage, that's the only way I can describe it, like you know, you couldn't get to the rest of the school, but we'd all wait in there. And then I can remember listening to my headphones, you know, the headphones with the styrofoam, with the flimsy wire, you know, trying to memorize Eazy-E word for word. I can remember it like it's yesterday. This is the era of the, you know, people wearing troops and triple fat goose and everything else. And you know, the entire culture and the music, you know, just drew me in. Around that time, you know, I can think of the first time I actually had money to buy a tape. And I bought 4 tapes at once. The first 4 tapes of hip hop I ever bought were Ice-T Power, Public Enemy, It Takes a Nation to Hold Us Back, Public Enemy, My Uzi Weighs a Ton, and Big Daddy Kane, Long Live the King. Those 4 tapes actually, you know, blossomed my entire love for hip hop. You know, when I was in middle school, you know, you used to take the paper bags and cut them and wrap your books and everything. I would take the covers off the tapes and put those on top of the paper bag and tape it down, just so I could look at the tape covers when I'm at school. And I can remember, you know, Big Daddy's lyrics from, you know, when I was a kid, off of, you know, Long Live the King. I got gold teeth and they don't chew beef. No pork on my fork, strictly fish on my dish. Those lyrics, you know, just, it just, you know, transcended everything I could think about music. And I loved it, and I've loved it to this day. And then even going from middle school and going into high school, the good thing about that time frame is, if, you know, for all those, you know, hip hop heads that are out there, you know, this is the late 80s, early 90s, you know, and this what's widely considered as the golden era of hip hop. So, you know, the music that was coming out then, you know, you had the first Das FX album that I got from a bootleg store that I played so much that the wording came off the front of the tape because they, you know, printed it with a low budget printer. That's when I can remember going into high school, coming off the Pintran bus, and you know, in Virginia, you know, banging Gangstar in my headphones, and or just thinking about it. You know, that's when Leaders of the New School first came out. You know, not, you know, way before Busta Rhymes, you know, even did. You know, talking about, you know, just another case of the PTA, and that golden era with Tribe, and you know, I was heavily influenced by East Coast rap. De La Soul, Stakes is High. Shout out to Sonny Anderson for the shirt. You know, for all my hip hop heads that, you know, out there, they'll understand the shirt. It's not about stakes. It's about Stakes is High, De La Soul. Just so happened to, you know, transfer it to the culinary side of it. But, you know, that was classic music. And it takes you back to times when things might have been hard, or, you know, you remember a certain point in your life and you just hear a lyric, you hear a riff, you hear a beat, and it just takes you back. And hip hop has spoken so much to me. I would actually say that it meant so much that it instantly transferred, you know, everything I had, you know, about love and art over to the cooking side of it. You know, it's all from the soul. If hip hop's not from the soul, you know, for lack of better terms, it's crappy rap. I don't listen to rap. I listen to hip hop. You know, so that's how I feel about that. You know, I feel like it transferred over. And this is the initial episode of this series. I want to talk about more artists. I want to talk about the way the genre moved, how it went from the East Coast and then went to the West Coast, and you know, hip hop got conscious, and you know, it was about African medallions and speaking out and you know, fighting for rights and you know, everything else. It was so interesting to me, and it was, you know, a little odd for me being one of the only, you know, kids in my neighborhood that was, you know, a white kid that listened to everything. I didn't wear the African medallion because I could, you know, lack of better terms, I probably, you know, would have got made fun of. So I wore a, you know, this is when Batman first came out. So I had my Batman medallion, you know, it let me try to catch part of the culture, you know. But thankfully, I feel like hip hop culture has let me in, and I appreciate it. I understand, you know, it means so much to me, just like my cooking, you know. So, you know, switching back over to the cooking part of it, that's enough about the music. We're gonna talk about that more as well. Let's come over here and we're gonna check out the steak and see if we got the temp right. All right, so here we go. We got the steak's been sitting. You can see that juice right there. Don't throw away that juice, because once you put this steak on somebody's plate, you can take all that natural juice and just pour it right over the steak. So let's cut into it just to see if we got where we wanted. This was in, like, again, like this is in the oven for 4 to 5 minutes. Again, this is a petite filet, so it's not a very big steak. You can kind of tell by pushing is where it's at. I think it's where we're at. I think we're gonna be pink right across the middle here. So let's see if I judge right. Yeah, we're a little, maybe just a tad overdone. You know, it's still pink. That's where I want it. I'd rather have it here than under, because my people that eat it well done might still eat it. You know, it's pink. It's where I want it. I'm gonna eat this steak. I'm gonna drink that Red Stripe, and I want to thank you. I want to thank everybody for subscribing, you know, for being here. And just like Sean Carter said, you could have been anywhere in the world but you're here with me, and I appreciate it. We'll see you again next time. Next week, we'll do Wednesday or Thursday. We'll do something different. Leave your comments. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Facebook. Subscribe to my YouTube. Be there for me. I'm going to be there for you. Thank you for being here. I truly, truly appreciate it. Let's enjoy this steak. Peace.
Your eyes for real, niggas who ain't got no feelings. Check it out now.